good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve. It's good to see you all out there. And the topic I want to broach this evening is the criminal justice system and the lack of access that the vast majority of people now have to that system. The criminal justice system in Canada has become a bastion of the rich. If you want to bring a class action suit, or if you have to defend your name against some kind of accusation or allegation, you are probably closing in on $500,000 to $1 million. And as in one article that I found, which describes the situation as Kafkaesque, and it certainly is. I found out myself when I was assaulted by the police, and I sued the police and actually took it to a settlement. Now this was all self-repped, and I'll tell you, it is unbelievably, it's not complicated when you know where to go. It's finding the signposts and the guides, because nobody wants to help you in this situation. Everyone is scared to death of giving you legal advice, and so you are wandering around in the wilderness trying to figure out, you don't know that there is a special Ontario Court Forms website, that there is the Rules of Civil Procedure website where you can go through the rules of how things are conducted within the court. All of these things are an absolute mystery. Filing motions, answering motions, that you have to have 3 copies, one that goes to the courts, one that goes to the other party, and one that you keep for yourself. The fact that you cannot take anything out of your claim. As I found, there was a name was written off in one motion, and so we did the front page and we took that name out. And I'll tell you, the trial or the court case nearly ended right there. You have to strike it out with a line, but you remove nothing from any part of your documentation. But who knew that? It made sense to us. It was a new document, a new situation, everything had changed. Where do you find that out? And this is where you find yourself in a lot of trouble. And so we've reached a situation where lawyers cost anywhere from $300 to $500 an hour, and they are timing every phone call. Duty counsel, which is basically a legal assistance person who will help you through your first court appearance, but whilst you're waiting to get some kind of legal representation. This is supposed to be a learning opportunity for a young lawyer, but unfortunately it is very poorly paid. And legal aid, literally, if you are earning more than $100 a week, you don't qualify for legal aid. And so this all has to come out of your own pocket, and boy oh boy, they can drag this out. My court case went from 2011 until 2015, and in all of that time I never once told my story. The whole thing was about motions and procedure and mistakes of procedure and arguing over procedure. And of course, because this took place down in Toronto, it meant about a 2.5 hour drive into the courthouse, and if you didn't get there by 8 o'clock in the morning and get your name signed in, boy oh boy, you could be in for a long all day wait. And so this is why the courts are clogged. People cannot afford lawyers, so they're trying to self-represent, and they don't know how to self-represent. They don't know how to find the information on how to do this, and so it just bogs down the whole system. And of course the lawyers on the other side for the prosecution are playing the hold-off game, because they know that every time you have to come back to court, it costs you money. And the more money and the less things that you achieve in your court date, the more daunting the whole process becomes. And so really we have now a justice system in name only, and by and large, unless you can get a large group of people together on one issue and push that forward in court. Anyway, let's pop over to these articles that I found, and I'll come back and do a quick wrap up. Okay, here we go. The Kafkaesque nightmare of British justice. Defendants are treated like Joseph K. in The Trial. Kafka, like Orwell and Dickens, belonged to that select band of authors whose name has become an adjective. Kafkaesque is a term most often used to describe an overwhelming bureaucracy or system that traps an unwitting individual in an illogical, nightmarish maze governed by complex forces beyond his or her control. I suspect that Kafka is more widely and heavily evoked as an adjective. The detail of what he wrote is less frequently considered. We think we know what he says. We've got the gist. There is, however, perhaps no other author who catches so keenly the confusion and distress of individuals who have lost all confidence and sense of their own rights in a system that appears to be operating according to its own unknowable rules, which are riddled with failings so familiar that they are now factored into expectations. The trial in particular is acutely relevant to our current age, in which our criminal justice system, once internationally renowned, is in a deepening state of crisis. Meanwhile, away from courts, informal trials with inconsistent rules and outcomes have become a frequent feature of both social media and company policy. These latter trials, although they lack legal force, nonetheless have the powers to ruin a life, to destroy an individual's reputation, to sink current and future prospects of employment, and in some especially bleak cases, to push those involved towards suicide. The trial, written in 1914-15 and first published posthumously in 1925, begins with the line, "Someone must have been telling lies about Joseph K., for without having done anything wrong he was arrested one fine morning." Thereafter K finds himself immersed in an interminable and terrifyingly hazy case in which he is the defendant. There is something particularly chilling about such an opening line because precisely the type of events it describes is familiar from UK history. In January this year, the Law Society submitted a parliamentary briefing on a criminal justice system in crisis, which it argues has been caused by years of underinvestment and neglect. The challenges it cited included increasing shortages of duty solicitors or counsellors, a restrictive means testing for legal aid, inefficiencies in the system, more and more courts being closed, and crucial evidence often not being disclosed. To take but a single example, the role of the criminal duty solicitor, a person you can call for professional advice if you are being held in a police cell. It is now so badly paid that younger lawyers are refusing to go into it. The youngest duty counsellor on the Isle of Wight is now 55 years old. She is understandably concerned about what happens to the rights of suspects once she retires. The rates that criminal barristers are paid for undertaking legal aid cases are often less than £100 a day for work, out of which they must pay travel costs and fees to chambers. Many are finding that despite an extensive education, for which they have usually incurred sizable debts and working long hours, they cannot afford even a modest mortgage out of their professional salary. Young barristers are therefore leaving crime work in their droves for commercial or corporate practice. There is no area of the law in which the stakes for the individuals concerned are so high. Yet those lawyers who remain in criminal law see cases being postponed and court buildings and the machinery crumbling. Okay, this is an article from 2011, Globe and Mail. Access to justice becoming a privilege of the rich, a judge warns. The middle class has been shut out of a justice system that caters primarily to the very rich and the very poor, the country's top judge has told a group of legal luminaries. Chief Justice Beverly McLaughlin of the Supreme Court of Canada said on Tuesday that the middle class cannot hope to pay legal fees that average $338 per hour, leaving them little option but to represent themselves in court or go away empty-handed. Do we have adequate access to justice? She asked a University of Toronto conference on the problem. It seems to me that the answer is no. We have wonderful justice for corporations and for the wealthy, but the middle class and the poor may not be able to access our justice system. High litigation costs deprive the poor access to justice. Deputy Judge President of the local division of the High Courts in Johannesburg, Phineas Mohapelo, said the cost of litigation is depriving the poor from access to justice. He was the guest speaker at the Johannesburg Attorneys Association annual general meeting on 12th of September in Johannesburg. He said that although there are organisations such as Legal Aid South Africa, Legal Aid SA and probono.org, there is still more than the legal profession needs to do to make access to justice a reality for the poor. So this just goes to show this is a worldwide phenomena. Obscenely high, how family court costs are destroying parents and their children. Mrs. Norton would sometimes receive up to 5 letters a day, including on weekends, from her ex-husband's lawyer. The letters were sometimes angry, allegedly threatening, and, according to a presiding judge, inflammatory and accusatory. Regardless, Norton would have to pay for her lawyers to read and respond to each one. The letters alleged that in being forced to leave the family home, I had chosen to adopt a nomadic way of life, Norton tells Guardian Australia. They alleged I was forcing my children to walk the crime-ridden streets and was feeding them junk food. They alleged I was an alcoholic, that I was mischievous, and that my extended family was insane. By the time the property and custody aspects of the bidder-to-court dispute were settled, she and her ex-husband had accrued more than $860,000 in legal fees. Now, the one distressing thing that I find about the failure of the criminal justice system is that a functioning legal justice system is one of the things that defines a civilization. If you don't have a functioning justice system that is egalitarian and allows everyone to have their voice, and that financial impediment should not be imposed, or financial hardship should not be imposed to have your day in court. And the point I made actually to the judge when I was going through my situation is that we as a society accept that our legal justice system is a very important part of our society and civilization, and that we all contribute towards that with our tax dollars. That's how our justice system is paid for, and we do that because we agree that it's important and that it should give all of us access to that legal justice system. And now somehow it's got twisted out of shape where only really the mega rich have their day in court and can push it through to the very end. And quite often, as they found out in my case, where I didn't win my case over any sympathy or belief that my story was the correct one and provable one, it was won because I caught the judge and the defense lawyer in ex-party communication. In other words, they were communicating behind my back via email, and it came out in a transcript, so it was a printed document. And when I brought this up, all of a sudden the judge's hammer came down. I won the motion, she fled from the court, and next thing you know, I have a settlement. So there you go. That took 4 years to get to that point. It's still staggering when I think of that situation. And I did make a video describing all of the things that I went through because as I said, well, with the survival thing, as much as anything, it's a mental game. It's staying on top of your mental game. Okay, I will be finishing that video at some point in the near future and sharing that information with you, just for people, because when I look on the internet, there's how to fill out forms and so on and so forth, and all kinds of other legal information, but nobody really kind of strikes on what it's like to be in that courtroom. And many of you may find yourself in that situation where you can't afford a lawyer and you need to self-represent, and you need to know how to file a motion, to respond to a motion, how to get your evidence in front of the judge, and how to approach the bench and present yourself within that courtroom system. These are all handy little tools, and I used my experience as a learning situation to get me over the basically 4 years of freaking anguish. I mean, it's a like I say, it's a real head game. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe below, and in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening. See you now. Take care. Bye.